Draft resolution, Mr. Kashunas, for his opinion. Following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. At the end of each paragraph, I shall put the paragraph to the vote. Where a paragraph has not been amended, I will put the paragraph to the vote. If multiple consecutive paragraphs have not been amended, I will put the paragraphs together for a vote unless anyone requests a separate vote on a particular paragraph. We will begin with paragraphs 1 through 8 together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs 1 through 8? Seeing not, we will take paragraphs 1 through 8 together. Anyone against? Please raise your placard or raise your hand. Please hold your hand up in the air. Let's see over here. Okay. Okay, thank you. All those in favor of paragraphs 1 through 8, please raise your hand and keep it up in the air. I believe we have an overwhelming majority. You can take those down. And just for practice, any abstentions, you can raise your placard now. Okay, thank you. Paragraphs 1 through 8 are agreed to. Let's go right into here. Okay. I call Mr. Agajanyan from Armenia to propose Amendment 1. You have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, we believe that it's very important to refer to the comprehensive resolution of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict in this paragraph for the following reason. You know that Azerbaijan carried out an aggressive 44-day war against Nagorno-Karabakh in 2020, and since then, Azerbaijan declares it has resolved the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and that we should all forget the word Nagorno-Karabakh and the Armenians that live there. At the same time, Azerbaijan has consistently been undermining the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairmanship, describing it as an outdated format. First of all, I'd like to mention that the Minsk Group co-chairmanship is the only international format which has the full mandate to mediate the peace process till its final and comprehensive resolution. And it would be incomprehensible if especially this Parliamentary Assembly, wouldn't vote for this amendment. Moreover, yesterday in this speech, Mr. Genjaliev was saying that his constituency as an MP is Nagorno-Karabakh region, and that the Armenians who live there are his fellow citizens who enjoy the same rights and freedoms as other citizens of Azerbaijan. I ask my colleague, which Armenians are you talking about? The ones who have been totally cleansed from the territory that is now under the control of Azerbaijani troops? There are no Armenians left there, dear colleagues, so which Armenians are you referring to? Or you mean the Armenians who live in the territory controlled by the peacekeepers, who you offer nothing more than continuous harassment with loudspeakers and calling to Muslim prayer in the middle of the night, and to whom you deny heating gas and leave there to freeze in inhuman conditions? It is very peculiar to witness the identical wording from the leaders of Azerbaijan and their MP who represent Azerbaijan here, because during the shutdown of gas supply in Nagorno-Karabakh, the president of Azerbaijan made a comment saying that the issue of gas supply in Nagorno-Karabakh is an internal matter.
Thank you.
Yes, if I may finish. Dear colleagues, yes, it is an internal matter of Azerbaijan, and when subject of Azerbaijani internal matter become Armenians, they tend to physically disappear. Thank you.
Thank you. We're working on getting the clock fixed so that we can pose that. I would just ask everyone to please stay within the limits of 2 minutes so that we can give everyone a chance to speak. Thank you. Would anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Mr. Guliev from Azerbaijan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Chair, dear colleagues. Unfortunately, we again have been witnessing the same hostile rhetoric from Armenia, again trying to bring this type of, let's say, reformatory rhetoric to the agenda of the Assembly, which is very much dangerous and unacceptable. Dear colleagues, the proposed amendment is counterproductive and doesn't align with the purpose of the paragraph. The original paragraph has been carefully drafted by the rapporteur and reflects the agenda of the ongoing process of normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. This process is aimed at establishing interstate relations between two countries through direct talks. Contrary to this purpose, the proposed amendment only reflects absolute narratives and harms the ongoing post-conflict normalization efforts. At the trilateral Brussels meeting facilitated by the EU, the leaders of two states agreed to finalize the establishment of their national commissions for border delimitation, to proceed with unblocking the transport links and advance discussions on the future peace treaty. As our political leaders are engaged in sensitive but positive process, we, members of parliament, should support this process and not damage it, but by one-sided amendments that will do only harm. The Assembly should refrain from undermining already fragile peace process. Hence, I request my fellow colleagues to vote against the proposed amendment and adopt the paragraph as it was drafted by distinguished rapporteur. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And what is Mr. Kashunas' opinion of the amendment?
I would propose to stick to the original version of the report.
Thank the rapporteur. I shall now put Amendment 1 to the vote. Will those in favor of the amendment please raise your voting card and hold them in the air so that we may count? All those in favor of Amendment 1, please raise your voting card. Are we good? Okay, thank you. All those against, please raise your voting card and hold it in the air so that we may count them. I will let you know when to lower them.
No, it has to be the yellow one.
Are we good? Okay, thank you. Now, for all abstentions, please raise your voting card and hold it in the air. I'll let you know when to take it down. There's one over here.
Two. Now two.
Which was yours before?
Okay, thank you.
Read out there, it's 12 in favor.
With 12 votes in favor, 27 against, and 8 abstentions, the amendment is defeated. We will now vote on paragraph 9. As anyone against paragraph 9, please raise your voting card and hold it in the air. I'll let you know when to put it down. Anyone against paragraph 9? Okay, thank you. Those in favor, please raise your voting card, hold it in the air. I'll let you know when to lower it. Clear majority. The paragraph is adopted, as agreed to. We will now vote on paragraphs 10 through 16 together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs 10 through 16? So we'll take paragraphs 10 through 16 together. Anyone against paragraphs 10 through 16, please raise your voting card and hold it in the air. Those in favor? Clear majority, in the opinion of the chair. Paragraphs 10 through 16 are agreed to. Thank you. I now call Mr. Aby from Switzerland to propose Amendment 2. You have the floor.
Ja, Herr Vorsitzender, geschätzte Damen und Herren. Der Verhaltenskodex zu politisch-militärischen Aspekten der Sicherheit ist ein normatives Dokument der OSZE, das sich mit der demokratischen und parlamentarischen Kontrolle der Streit- und Sicherheitskräfte sowie mit den Rechten und Pflichten ihrer Mitarbeiter befasst. Dieser Verhaltenskodex wurde seit dem ersten Tag des Krieges in der Ukraine in vielerlei Hinsicht verletzt. In diesem Zusammenhang ruft die Schweizer Delegation der OSZE-PV auf, die Teilnehmerstaaten an ihre Verpflichtungen zu erinnern, die sich mit der Verabschiedung dieses Verhaltenskodex eingegangen sind. Unter anderem sind die Befehlshaber der Streitkräfte verpflichtet, ihre Autorität in Einklang mit dem geltenden nationalen und internationalen Recht auszuüben. Sie müssen sich auch darüber im Klaren sein, dass sie für die rechtswidrige Ausübung ihrer Autorität individuell haftbar gemacht werden können. Schließlich entbindet die Verantwortung der Vorgesetzten die Untergebenen nicht von ihrer individuellen Verantwortung. Die traurigen Ereignisse in der Ukraine zeigen, dass der Verhaltenskodex auch mehr als 25 Jahre nach seiner Verabschiedung nichts von seiner Bedeutung verloren hat.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 2? Please raise your placard. Seeing no speaker, I will ask Mr. Kashunas for your opinion on Amendment 2.
I support this amendment.
Thank you. I shall now put Amendment 2 to the vote. Will those in favor of Amendment 2 please raise your yellow voting card and hold it in the air? I'll let you know when we finish counting. In the opinion of the chair, there's a clear majority. You may lower your voting cards. Amendment 2 is adopted. I now call on Mr. Mihel from Romania to propose Amendment 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The current security context generated by the Russian military aggression against Ukraine has a tremendous impact on the OSCE's activity, and I believe that our focus should also be on the long-lasting effects and wide range of impact of this war within the no business as usual approach of the Polish OSCE chairmanship in office. The implications of this war are global, with complex ramifications that go beyond the concept of security in military terms. This war represents the gravest security and humanitarian crisis in decades, generating extremely serious consequences in all aspects of our lives, causing global vulnerabilities. Considering all these aspects, I propose including in paragraph 17 a specific reference to the security risks stemming from Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 3? Please raise your placard. Seeing not, I will ask Mr. Kashunas for your opinion on the amendment.
Important amendment, supported.
Thank you. Very succinct, very to the point. I appreciate that. We should now put Amendment 3 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 3 please raise your yellow voting card and hold it in the air so we can count? Again, in the opinion of the chair, there appears to be a clear majority. I will ask those against to please raise your voting card. Just those against the amendment. Okay, thank you. In the opinion of the chair, the amendment is adopted. We will now vote on paragraph 17 as amended. Anyone against paragraph 17 as amended, please raise your voting card. Those in favor, please raise your voting card. Opinion of the chair, it's a clear majority. The paragraph 17 as amended is agreed to. Thank you. We will now vote on paragraph 18. Anyone against paragraph 18, please raise your voting card. Those in favor, please raise your voting card. We are voting on paragraph 18. The opinion of the chair, there's a clear majority. Paragraph 18 is agreed to. Thank you. I now call on Mr. Garamendi from the United States to propose Amendment 4. Mr. Garamendi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this amendment is to clarify and to amplify the good language that already exists. Specifically, let's make it clear that we're talking about the Russian Federation's illegal occupation and annexation of Crimea. And furthermore, we're adding the illegitimate recognition and occupation of Luhansk and Donetsk regions. So it's simply to make it absolutely clear what we're talking about here. And the purpose of all this is to try to make it clear that the OSCE wants Russia completely out of Ukraine. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 4? See that there are no speakers. I will ask Mr. Kashunas for your opinion on Amendment 4.
A good clarification in favor of it.
Thank you. I shall now put Amendment 4 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 4 please raise your yellow voting card and hold it in the air so we can count? Thank you. Those against? Those against Amendment 4, please raise your yellow voting card. Opinion of the chair, the Amendment 4 is adopted. Thank you. We will now vote on paragraph 19 as amended. Anyone against paragraph 19 as amended, please raise your yellow voting card. Anyone against the paragraph? Thank you. Those in favor of paragraph 19 as amended, please raise your yellow voting card. Opinion of the chair, there's a clear majority. Paragraph 19 as amended is agreed to. And this is... Okay, I now call Mr. Hajiani from Cyprus to propose Amendment 5.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, we are clearly living in concerning times, with active war now again taking place in the center of Europe. Perhaps equally concerning is the casual way in which some actors have been speaking about serious escalation. In such a setting, I think it is critical that we as Assembly remind of the basic truth that absolutely everybody loses in case of a nuclear war. No first-use agreement are an important confidence-building mechanism, and I hope we will be on a record supporting this. I thank our colleagues from parliamentarians for nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament for contributing to this. Please support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now recognize Mr. Cornyn from the United States to speak against Amendment 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I'd just like to note that this morning news reveals that Turkey has detained a Russian ship with grain stolen from Ukraine, and I want to personally applaud the humanitarian intervention by Turkey in an effort to avert weaponization of the global food supply. Now I want to thank our friends from Cyprus for raising an important issue that merits discussion and debate. The Reagan-Gorbachev dictum affirmed a very sound principle. We can all agree that in an ideal world, nuclear war should never be fought. But we know we don't live in an ideal world. We live in the real world, one in which Vladimir Putin has threatened to use nuclear weapons to create a rift in the international rules-based order that Reagan and Gorbachev sought to bridge. A no first-use policy would send a signal to Putin that his nuclear saber-rattling is working, and it would abandon an effective deterrent to further Russian aggression in Europe. Now is the time to come together in not only a show of peace through unity, but in a show of peace through strength. That's why I will be voting no on this amendment, and I encourage my fellow delegates to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you. What is Mr. Kashunas' opinion of the amendment?
I also support the idea of peace through strength, because nuclear deterrence is still a doctrine which is needed. We can bind our hands, but Putin will not be bound by any agreements and regulations. That's why we still have a possibility to have this strategic uncertainty and nuclear deterrence. So I'm against the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I should now put Amendment 5 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 5 please raise your yellow voting card and hold it in the air so that we may count? I will let you know when to lower your card. All those in favor of Amendment 5?
Also 4, 1, 10, 5. It's changed. 8.
Are we good? Okay, thank you. Those against, please raise your yellow card and hold it in the air so that we may count. I will let you know when to lower it. I'm also against.
3, 6, 10.
Thank you. Are there any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, with 24 in favor, 23 against, 1 abstention, the amendment is adopted. I now call Mr. Garamendi of the United States to propose amendment number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, this amendment is to clarify and amplify, specifically dealing with what we now have credible evidence that war crimes are being committed in Ukraine by Russia. Included among those war crimes would be murder, rape, and forced deportation. With this amendment simply writes into this well-conceived paragraph the facts that exist today. We need to be very clear about calling out whenever war crimes occur, wherever they may occur. We know that they are occurring, there's credible evidence, they are occurring in Ukraine, and it is Russia that is doing it. And that's what this amendment is for. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 6? Please raise your placard to be recognized. Seeing no speakers, I will ask Mr. Kashunas for your opinion on Amendment 6.
In favor of amendment.
Thank you. I should now put Amendment 6 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 6 please raise your yellow voting card and hold it in the air? I'll let you know when we're finished counting. In the opinion of the chair, there is a clear majority. Amendment 6 is adopted without objection. Thank you. We will now vote on paragraph 20 as amended. Anyone against paragraph 20 as amended, please raise your yellow voting card. Anyone against paragraph 20 as amended, please raise your yellow voting card. Thank you. Those in favor of paragraph 20 as amended, please raise your yellow voting card. Opinion of the chair, there's a clear majority. Thank you. Paragraph 20 as amended is agreed to. I now call Mr. Dunava from Romania to propose Amendment 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We propose to include a reference to the Moscow mechanism in this paragraph, invoked by 45 participating states alongside the mention of the Commission of Inquiry of the UN Human Rights Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 7? Please raise your placard to be recognized. Seeing no speaker, I will ask Mr. Kashunas for your opinion on the amendment.
Good amendment, supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall now put Amendment 7 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 7 please raise your yellow voting card? Pretty clear. Would all those against please raise your yellow voting card? It's the opinion of the chair. There's a clear majority for. Amendment 7 is adopted. We will now vote on paragraph 21 as amended. Anyone against paragraph 21 as amended, please raise your yellow voting card. Those in favor of paragraph 21 as amended, please raise your yellow voting card. The opinion of the chair, there's a clear majority. Paragraph 21 as amended is agreed to. Thank you. We will now vote on paragraphs 22 through 25 together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? So we will take paragraphs 22 through 25 together. Anyone against these paragraphs, please raise your yellow voting card. Those in favor, please raise your yellow voting card. Abstentions? Paragraphs 22 to 25 are agreed to. I now call on Mr. Agajanian of Armenia to propose Amendment 8. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, with your permission, I will read out loud the proposed amendment. Calls on Azerbaijan and Armenia to engage in good faith in negotiations to resolve all remaining issues related to or resulting from the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, continue advancing towards deblocking of transport links and border security and delimitation, calls on Azerbaijan to immediately release the remaining detainees, and calls on the sides to work on determining the fate of missing persons throughout the conflict, and to accept the UNESCO technical mission aimed at protecting the cultural heritage of the region. The reason why I read this out loud, dear colleagues, is so that you understand and hear yourselves that there is nothing that will create tension or adds any tension, as my Azerbaijani colleague just said. One thing I would like to stress is the following. And this, I think, is very important to stress because of yesterday's speech of our Azerbaijani colleagues who said that the remaining prisoners of war or detainees who are still kept in the prisons of Azerbaijan are terrorists. That's what they call them. I'd like to read out loud the resolution adopted by the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly on 13th of September 2020, which among other points states that it considers that the clear intention of Article 8 of the trilateral statements was the exchange of all detained persons without distinction as to the status assigned by one or of the other parties. Dear colleagues, if this paragraph doesn't get included in this report, this will mean that there is no referring to the conflict and the issues that are present in our region. And this Parliamentary Assembly has been reiterating many times that we should not focus only on one spot in the region, but we should talk about all the crises that we're dealing with in the whole region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 8? Mr. Guliev is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The preamble paragraph proposed by rapporteur already covers the normalization process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It underscores the importance of establishment of good neighborly relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan and the continued engagement of the OSCE in this context. It also encourages wider international community to assist the parties in direct talks, confidence-building measures, and abstain from the use of force. However, the proposed amendment deviates from aforementioned approach and harms the normalization process by selectively propagating some topics at the exclusion of the others. For example, the issue of the Armenian detainees must be addressed in due process without undue interference in accordance with the rule of law. This has also been confirmed by the European Court for Human Rights and International Court of Justice. The trilateral Brussels meeting between two leaders facilitated by the EU Council President Charles Michel gave a positive impetus to peace and reconciliation in the region. As I said earlier, we need to focus on a agreed positive agenda and avoid confrontational rhetoric. At this crucial moment, the OSCE should support these important efforts and not undermine it by voting in favor of such one-sided amendment. Dear colleagues, this is up or down. Vote for supporting peace in our region or continuation of confrontation and instability. I kindly ask you to vote for peace and reject this amendment as we rejected amendment number 1. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. What is Mr. Kashunas' opinion of the amendment?
I would propose to keep the original version of report.
Thank you. I should now put Amendment 8 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 8 please raise your voting card, please, your yellow voting card, please hold it in the air so that we have time to count. I'll let you know when to lower it.
Three cards in one hand. Three cards in one hand, so that's three.
Okay, thank you. Will all those against the amendment please raise your yellow voting card and hold it so that we have time to count. Thank you. Abstentions? Thank you. With a vote of 20 in favor, 24 against, and 13 abstentions, the amendment is defeated. We will now vote on paragraphs 26 to 32 together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? So we will take paragraphs 26 to 32 together. I'm sorry.
Before we go to paragraph 26, I have a proposal that in this resolution, part of the resolution, I mean this part, there is no mention about the conflict between Georgia and Russia, which I find very unfortunate, and therefore I would propose to add here the following sentence that calls on Russia to deoccupy Georgian territories of Abkhazia and Skin Valley region and constructively engage in Geneva international discussions.
Should I ask him to write it, or should we accept it as normal?
I think Katya is writing down.
So the gentleman has proposed an amendment to paragraph 26. Could we ask you to please repeat the language a little more slowly so that the Secretariat staff can record?
Calls on Russian Federation to deoccupy Georgian territories of Abkhazia and Skin Valley region and engage constructively in Geneva international discussions.
Sorry. If the committee would please pause for a second, I want to make sure we get the language correct. We will suspend for just a minute. If everyone will stay close by, we'll be right back.
the committee needs to.
Okay, if the committee will come to order. An oral amendment has been proposed, and I would ask Manu if you would read the amendment to be inserted between paragraph 25 and 26.
Calls on Russia to deoccupy Georgian territories of Abkhazia and Skhin Valley region and engage constructively in Geneva international discussions.
In accordance with paragraph 10 of Rule 22 of our Rules of Procedure, first I will ask whether there's any objection to the oral amendment being considered. If there's any objection, the oral amendment cannot be considered and it fails. Is there any objection to this amendment? Seeing there's no objection, we will proceed to consider the amendment in the same way as other amendments. That is, we will hear from the proposer of the oral amendment, one speaker against the oral amendment, and the opinion of the rapporteur. We will then decide by a simple majority vote whether to adopt the oral amendment. Is there any objection? And seeing there's no objection, I'll recognize the proposer of the amendment. You're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Since this conflict was the first conflict in our area, OSCE area, that erupted, and this was the first gross violation of the territorial integrity of a sovereign state by another OSCE participating state. I think it is absolutely necessary to have it reflected in the General Committee's resolution. Therefore, this is a statement which is supported by the whole international community that calls on Russia to deoccupy Georgian territories and calls on Russia to constructively engage in Geneva international discussions, which are co-chaired by this organization, OSCE, European Union, and United Nations. So I think this is a proposal that will find support of all member states that are represented here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the oral amendment? Please raise your placard to be recognized. Seeing not, I will ask Mr. Kashunas for your opinion on the oral amendment.
I think it's a good idea. I support the amendment.
Thank you. I shall now put the oral amendment to a vote. All those in favor of the oral amendment, please raise your yellow placard. Hold your card high. I'll let you know when we're finished counting. In the opinion of the chair, there's a clear majority. Without objection, the oral amendment is adopted. We will now vote on paragraphs 26 to 32 together. Anyone against paragraphs 26 to 32, please raise your yellow voting card if you're against the paragraph 26 to 32. I see one. All those in favor, please raise your yellow voting card. In the opinion of the chair, it's a clear majority. Paragraphs 26 to 32 are agreed to. I call on Mr. Hajiani from Cyprus to propose Amendment 9. Sir, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As with my previous amendment, which this builds upon, this was sparked somewhat by indiscreet references to the possibility of nuclear armed conflict in the context of Ukraine. This is simply unacceptable. Such references are a reminder of why, in the longer term, we should be working towards ending nuclear weapons entirely. As long as there are nuclear weapons, there is the possibility of nuclear escalation, and so we must take a dedicated step-by-step approach to eliminating these terrible pieces of technology. I hope you agree to this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now recognize Mr. Cornyn of the United States to speak against Amendment 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vladimir Putin has threatened the use of nuclear weapons in furtherance of his illegal invasion of Ukraine and perhaps beyond. Several OSCE members are nuclear states, and this capability remains a credible deterrent to Putin's further crimes. Nothing would make Putin happier than for OSCE members, and particularly for NATO countries, to abandon unilaterally their nuclear arsenals. It's important to remember that not every nuclear state is the same. There is no moral equivalence. Some seek to protect the international rules-based order, like each of us here today. Others, like Russia, use their nuclear arsenal to threaten the very foundation of this international order, the cornerstone of which is national sovereignty. Now is not the time to eliminate OSCE member states' nuclear deterrent. I intend to vote no on the amendment, and I urge my fellow delegates to vote no as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cornyn. What is Mr. Kashunas' opinion of the amendment?
The same positions according amendment number 5. So as long as nuclear weapons exist, and especially if it exists in Russia, we should have a chance on nuclear deterrence. We should have a chance. So that's why I'm also proposing to keep the original version of a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall now put Amendment 9 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 9 please raise your yellow voting cards and hold them in the air so that we may count. Thank you. Will all those against please raise your yellow voting card. Please hold them until I let you know we finish counting. Thank you. Abstentions? Are there any abstentions? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4.
3 on my side.
Thank you.
3 on my side.
With a vote of 13 in favor, 39 against, and 5 abstentions, the amendment is defeated. We will now vote on paragraph 33 and 34 together. Does anyone want a separate vote on either of these two paragraphs? So we will take paragraphs 33 and 34 together. Anyone against these paragraphs, please raise your yellow voting card. Those in favor of 33 and 34, please raise your yellow voting card. The opinion of the chair, there's a clear majority. Without objection, paragraphs 33 and 34 are agreed to. Okay, that concludes the consideration of amendments. I want to thank you all for working within the constraints of the 2 minutes and allowing everyone the time to express your views. I propose that we now formally move to a vote on the draft resolution as amended. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution as amended, please raise your yellow voting cards and hold them until I tell you we finish counting. Thank you. Those against, please raise your yellow voting cards. Any abstentions? The draft resolution as amended is adopted. You may applaud. Well, thank you very much. We've finished our deliberations on the draft resolution in a very efficient time. We will begin our debate on the first supplementary item allocated to us by the Standing Committee this afternoon after the address by the OSCE chairperson in office. The speaking lists are open in the table office. We will now stand adjourned until this afternoon. Thank you very much.